Welcome back to Light the Fuse, a Mission Impossible podcast. I'm Drew Taylor, joined once again by Charles Hood.
Hello.
We wanted to tell you that this podcast is going to cover every aspect of Mission Impossible.
Yes.
Every one.
We'll do episodes about each movie, and then we'll do follow-up episodes to different aspects of each movie. We're going to talk about the old show, episodes from the old show, episodes from the 80s show.
Yep. Mission Impossibles that never happened. We're going to look at the Oliver Stone and David Fincher, Joe Carnahan versions of the different movies. So
we'll dig up everything we can dig up about that stuff. We'll do special episodes about the music of the whole series, which is obviously crucial. We're gonna have some friends who are big fans of each movie. We're gonna bring them in and have them talk about it as well. And
yeah, it's gonna be great.
To try to get guests also who are involved with the series. If we can.
If anyone is involved, please let us know. But we thought we'd start with the first movie.
Yes.
Like, where do we even start with this first movie?
There's so much. As I said in our last episode, I was instantly obsessed with the whole series, and that first trailer just pulled me in. And I wasn't even really aware. I think I was 13 at the time, so I don't think I was really aware of Brian De Palma at the time. I think this started to get me interested in him, and his direction in this movie is amazing.
It's crazy how much the trailer gives away if you rewatch it.
I should have rewatched it.
It's crazy. We'll rewatch it. We'll talk about it next time. My question for you: did your dad go with you to see this movie?
He did.
And
he did.
Was that like
It was a really good bonding experience. He also raised me on the James Bond movies. We'd watch all those together in the marathons that were on TV, and we had all the VHS tapes, and we'd watch them. And so this was sort of an extension of that, I think.
Did he like it?
Yes, he did. But I don't, we'll get into my journey with my dad and the Mission Impossible series as we move along, because I don't think I have seen. I've tried to see the other ones with him. We'll get into it.
The reason I asked, though, is, okay, so you saw the show. Let's just get right into the most controversial aspect of this movie.
You want to jump right in? Jim Phelps?
We're jumping into Jim Phelps.
Okay. So Jim Phelps was Peter Graves is the actor who played Jim Phelps in the old series and in the 80s series, too. And they have Jon Voight play Jim Phelps. And spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the first movie, go watch it. Pause it right now. Okay? Now unpause it.
Okay, we're back.
Here we go.
Okay.
Jim Phelps is the bad guy.
Yeah.
In the first movie.
Which was hugely controversial.
Yes. I obviously, like I said before, I went to the Museum of Television and Radio and just watched a whole bunch of episodes of the old show. I didn't really have an emotional connection to Jim Phelps. I didn't really care. I actually loved the first season of the old show the most, and Jim Phelps isn't in that.
Okay.
It's this other guy, I think Dan Briggs is his name. He's a different actor. He's the one who leads the IMF team. I don't know if you've seen those episodes or
I've
aware
seen
of
it
this.
intermittently.
But this guy who was we'll get into this when we talk more about the old show, but he was in the first season, and he was so incredibly difficult and wouldn't show up for work on certain days. He said for religious reasons or whatever.
Really?
We'll have to research this more.
Okay.
But because of that, they kicked him off and brought in Peter Graves in season 2 to lead the IMF team. I love Briggs. He's just, Peter Graves has that thing that they played on in the airplane movies and everything where he's, a little more overdoing it, I think. Whereas the guy who plays Briggs is very subtle, and I loved him. So, I wasn't upset about the Jim Phelps thing, but I didn't grow up with it like other people did.
Well, and the original intention for the opening of this movie, was that they were going to have the cast from the show come back and just be killed off. Did you?
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that was, and I guess that they were just like, well, fuck that. We're not doing it. We are.
Wow. So they were going to bring back the actors like
they were going to bring
Peter
back
Lupus and Barbara Bain and stuff like that.
Yeah. So they were going to be the original team. Because
and Martin Landau too?
I guess so.
He's the best.
I mean, that's why Brian De Palma talks about this in the documentary. You have a Mission Impossible movie, but it's also a Tom Cruise movie. So what do you do to make it a Tom Cruise movie?
Right.
You got to kill off the whole team.
I think it's so great. The whole first 25 minutes is
amazing.
Feels like an episode of the old show.
Yeah.
It's like 2 episodes because the opening, little cold open, is like the end of another episode where they're finishing a mission, and I love that they just throw you right in.
The cold open feels almost the most like the show that any of the movie has. Would you agree with that?
Of the first movie?
I'm saying that first opening, they're in a warehouse. They have a magic potion that comes back.
They created a set.
Yes.
It just feels like
he's got a mask.
To me, the Langley sequence in the midpoint set piece of the first movie is the greatest Mission Impossible sequence.
But that feels more
in
like
the whole
the show
series.
to you? Because that just felt, from what I've seen in the show, that was the kind of stuff they were doing.
They did so many different things that, I mean, they didn't always make sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Wow, tough crowd. Where do we even start with talking about this? I guess we already started talking about this movie.
Yes, we started.
We
There's
both
so
watched
much
it
to talk
last
about.
night. We both took a lot of notes.
Yes.
I am obsessed with the presentation. I mean, what's amazing about this movie, and I think this speaks to De Palma's love of sort of tactile filmmaking, not a lot of like techno-y stuff, but their depiction of the internet is hilarious, and I am obsessed with it.
I love the movie so much, so I'm happy to look past it. But we can talk about how ridiculous the internet is in this movie.
He searches for Max.com. I had to look up when Google was not even formed until '98. So we're
not
giving him some
easy for Ethan Hunt to go on the internet. And
this
do
was
this
'95,
stuff.
right, or probably '94 when they filmed it.
Yeah.
So
probably.
This was the
Came out
earliest
96,
days.
May '96. So they were shooting probably '95.
There was a tie-in with Mac, some.
There was?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I didn't
there
know
was like
about
the Apple II or something. We'll find a ad. There were like full page, like magazine ads.
Oh.
And they only use it, I think, in that last scene on the train, which is kind of interesting. But it's so interesting about the Langley scene. It's a scene about getting information off a computer, but it's the most physical.
If we're going to
sequence.
talk about that sequence, that I looked at the running time, and it's 9 minutes. When Cruise gets lowered into that room, 9 minutes where it's just barely a few lines of dialogue from Ving Rhames.
Right.
And just a few light sound effects. And other than that, silence.
Yeah.
For 9 minutes.
Right.
That's not something that you see in movies.
No, never.
You just don't.
And
Since like North by Northwest.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up too, because I went and watched the section on the movie from De Palma, the great documentary De Palma, and he refers to that sequence as the silent sequence.
Oh, that's so good. There's no way that people would put music all over that nowadays.
Oh yeah. I can't think of the last time a movie had silence. Maybe we should just sit in silence for a moment.
Well, there was A Quiet Place that just came out.
Oh, that's right. But there's
Which
music,
was great.
There's a lot of music.
There is music, but that movie is great. I
okay.
really appreciated the silence in that movie as well.
So here's some things that I picked up on just on this most recent viewing. Emilio Estevez, his alias is Tony Beretta. Which I'm really...
Is that on the computer screen?
That's on the computer screen. Yeah.
Okay.
Really love Tom Cruise's sweater/leather jacket combo.
Oh yeah.
Kind of a crew neck.
No, he looks good.
We can talk about.
Well, I think we have to do a tracker for each movie. We need to talk about this. We need to talk about Cruise's hair.
Yes.
So in the first movie, he goes with the buzz cut,
which I think is very cool.
And I think he looks great. I think this may be my favorite version of Cruise. Maybe I'm biased because the first one's which we'll get into ranking all the movies later.
Yes.
But the first one I just adore. I'd say his hair is maybe an inch or 2 inches long.
Well,
I think we should talk about how long it is in each movie.
Yeah, it could be a little longer because it's sort of uneven. It's kind of that cool early 90s thing where it's kind of...
When he takes off the mask, you can see it spikes in all directions, and it's like some hairs are 2 or 3 inches, some are only 1.
Right. Well, tell me if you had this experience, but as a kid, when you would see like Entertainment Tonight premiere footage or a picture of him in a magazine, and he had short hair, I would always think, oh my God, they're making another Mission Impossible movie.
Right.
Because to me, the short hair is so identified with the first movie. Yeah.
And he's never really gone back that
He's never gone
far.
back. No.
I really want him to.
I do too. I love his kind of feathered hair in the fourth one.
Yes. We'll
talk about it. Okay, I'm not going to jump ahead.
The other thing I wanted to track in each movie is how much time we see Tom Cruise running on screen.
And what did we clock?
My not exact counter, but I counted out the best I could, 37 seconds. So
That's
37 seconds of Tom Cruise running a lot. It's not a lot of sustained. It's really like 2 or 3 seconds here, 2 or 3 seconds there. He jumps out of the aquarium restaurant.
Yes.
He's running for a few seconds. It's just some slow-mo, gives it a little bit more running time. That's nice. Now, there was a technicality. There's a part where he's, as a fireman, they go into Langley and he's dressed as a fireman, but it's a different actor playing Tom Cruise. So I didn't count that.
Wait, how did you know that?
Well, you look closely enough, you know that's not actually... come on, he'd be the greatest actor ever if he looked like he was a completely different person.
Well, speaking
maybe
of that...
Maybe it is him, because I think Cruise is, amazing. So maybe it was him. If you do count that, that'd be an additional 5 or 6 seconds, so we'd get it into the 40s.
Well, speaking of Cruise being a different person, later in the series, they introduced the fact that they have a chip that can change your voice. If you're in a mask, you're either silent or doing some kind of broad SNL style impression.
Right.
And what I love about them debriefing him on who he's going to play in that opening sequence is Tom Cruise is playing that senator.
Yeah. That's a classic thing from the old show.
Yeah.
Like that's Martin Landau would do that all the time. They'd have him be like, "Oh, I'm going to impersonate this guy who happens to look like Martin Landau in makeup." Like that's a thing that we will.
It's
that's,
so great.
So like to me, the first movie is totally pulled from the old
Yeah.
show. It's so great.
And his sort of foghorn leghorn-esque accent is so good.
Yeah.
I do declare, or whatever.
We'll have to talk about that when we get to the later movies, how the technology advanced so they could put chips in their whatever voice box.
Which gave us a great part of the third one. I told you this before. I noticed this time that Ethan's mother's name is Margaret Ethan Hunt.
Right. So
he's named after his mother's maiden name, which I think is actually cool.
So her maiden name? Are you sure that was her maiden name? It could just be her middle name.
That could be her middle name, but that's my...
I mean, Ethan's kind of a weird last name, isn't it?
You never...
You think her name was Margaret Ethan before she got married?
Yeah.
They don't mention his father either. Don't they say his uncle?
They say she is living on that farm with his uncle, and they also allude to the fact that...
we don't know if she might be a single mother.
Yes. Well, they also allude to the fact that Phelps has kind of been his father.
Right.
Does this resonate with you at all and your relationship with your father?
Well, I know who my father is, and he's just not around that much. It's a little different, I think. It seems like Phelps is around a lot for Ethan Hunt, but maybe it was his father, and Ethan Hunt doesn't know it. There's so much to talk about.
Can we talk about the split diopters?
Oh, split! I actually took note of all the different split diopters, which I'm sure everyone at home will be so excited to hear about.
The one that
if people don't know what a split diopter shot is, it's like within a single shot, it's sort of a split screen where the focus splits. Just Google
something
it.
Something can be very in the foreground and in the background, and they can both be in focus.
Yeah. Yes.
And there's usually a blurry line down the middle.
It's like a shallow focus shot. It doesn't really make sense. So it's like it sort of draws your attention. De Palma, there's so many De Palma trademarks in this movie, and he does a bunch of these split diopter shots. I think my favorite one is when Kittredge is talking to Barnes in the foreground in this tight two shot, and the guy who he's talking about banishing to Alaska is deep in the background on the far left side of the frame.
He's like against the screen.
It's beautiful.
I love the I think that a lot of people's favorite is maybe the rat and Jean
split
Reno.
diopter. Yeah, that's
and then I noticed this time there's a knife split diopter when the guy comes in and looks at it on the table. There's this he comes in the door, the knife is in the foreground, and you see it all.
Yeah, a really great one is in that sequence. I love this sequence. I think is amazing. Is when John Voight and Cruise are talking. It's when Cruise reveals that he's alive still, and he's lying to him. And so it's I think it was one of those sequences that people were confused by, but it's just I think absolutely amazing. Is that John Voight's lying to Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise is instead of envisioning the lie, he's seeing the actual truth.
Right.
Like Cruise knows. So this is basically Cruise is figuring out what's happening while Voight is lying to him.
Yes.
And in that sequence, they show Claire blow up Hannah.
Yeah.
And in that's a split diopter shot.
Yeah.
It's in super slow-mo, and you see the car explode on the left side of the split.
And she turns towards
And
camera.
then on the right, Claire's face slowly turns. Oh, that's
an amazing shot.
Yeah, that whole sequence is phenomenal. I think the Danny Elfman's cue, is I think is one of the best pieces of music he's ever written.
And in the whole franchise.
In his whole career, I think Elfman, that's one of my favorite pieces of music.
And we can talk about this later in our musical episode, but he had something like 4 weeks or something to do it. Yeah,
it was one of those famous cases. I think was it Alan Silvestri?
Alan Silvestri's score was rejected. A lot of it went into Eraser, which was released later that summer.
Right.
This was also...
And they brought in Elfman, and he wrote it in 4 weeks, and I think it's one of his best scores.
Yeah, and this was the first time I realized that like Memorial Day was like a big weekend for movies. Right. This
kicked off the summer.
May 25th. Yeah, it kicked off the summer in the biggest way possible.
Is it? For some reason, the number in my head was always May 22nd.
We're gonna have to look.
We have to do some research.
Kevin's just looking at us. He doesn't care.
In the back.
Here's the real question I have: what is that disc movie system that Phelps has at the beginning?
I don't know what that technology is. That's first class '90s airplane technology.
He gets to smoke and he gets to watch.
I love that whole thing. It's just like the whole old show. But I want to say back to Elfman's music. I think we were talking about this earlier. That I feel like Elfman's version of the main theme it's the purest, best version of the Mission Impossible theme.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Lalo Schifrin, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but he's amazing, and the original score is incredible, but it's a smaller orchestra. It's, you know, it's different instruments, and I think when Elfman had that giant orchestra, he, you know, can do more with it. Obviously 30 years later.
Yeah.
With the recording technologies better and everything too. So, but to me, Elfman's version of the main theme is just, he just hits it so hard, and it's just, it's amazing.
Was that the first time he had done another person's theme? Because a few years later, he would redo the whole Psycho score with Steve Bartek.
That was, yeah.
But I think this might have been the first time he
adapted someone else's.
Kevin says yes. Okay. Yeah, so let's talk about that scene where he's talking to Phelps, and then the scene where he's with Kittredge in the aquarium restaurant.
Oh, that sequence is amazing.
So those are two sequences where he is saying what he thinks happened. One time he's saying what he thinks is the truth. The other time he's kind of going along with a lie.
Right.
Both are inspired by a sequence that Brian De Palma did in Body Double, which I rewatched Body Double recently, just coincidentally, and on the special features he talks about, oh, I brought this back from Mission Impossible. So there's that scene towards the end of Body Double where Craig Wasson, your favorite actor, is telling the audience and telling whoever's trying to listen what he thinks has happened with this whole murder plot with this woman in a window and all this stuff. And it's completely wrong, but we see his version of it.
Right.
And it's not until later that we reveal the truth. Yeah.
De Palma's your favorite director?
He's one of them, yeah. Like the Empire podcast recently did a whole rundown of Brian De Palma. There was a lot of debate about whether or not Mission Impossible is a true Brian De Palma movie.
It is. Of course it is.
Yeah,
There's so many trademarks. That was something I wrote down, was
all
De
right,
Palma
give me your
trademarks. Okay, the first thing that struck me was when they go to the embassy, and he starts the embassy with an overhead shot. This embassy is all staircase. It's like staircases on top of staircases. It's like there's an overhead shot of the embassy, you know, where they're gonna go, and when Tom Cruise is doing his foghorn leghorn thing.
Okay.
As the politician, he starts it with this overhead shot, and it's just this whole embassy is giant staircases. I don't know what people do in this place. I don't know how he found this location, but I'm sure De Palma just died of happiness when he found this location. I don't know if they shot it in Prague, which also they use Prague so well in this.
Yes, and one of the first movies to use Prague, and even so, the script, the David Koepp script. So there was a lot of competing drafts of the script. The first draft of the script was all set in America, and De Palma went to Cruise and said, "What are you talking about? This is Mission Impossible. We can go anywhere."
Yeah.
So that's why it's
he
very
talks about
European.
that in the documentary.
De Palma documentary. Yep.
Yeah. So staircases. Okay. Obviously, that's a De Palma thing, and this embassy was. This time when I was watching it, I just almost laughed because I was like, "Oh my god, this place all staircase." The split screen sets. There's the part in that sequence a few minutes later when Cruise is downstairs and he has to sneak under the elevator. There's a shot that goes, you know, through the wall
and then
looks
up.
And then up, and then looks at Emilio Estevez on top of the elevator. Like that's another De Palma trademark. Overhead shots. There's a lot of bird's eye stuff in interior overhead shots. POV shots, first person, which you were just talking about earlier. Nobody does first person POV shots anymore. It's the kind that De Palma does, especially just, you know, he does Steadicam, so moving through, interacting with people. Actors looking at a camera. Yeah. There's a lot of voyeurism. I mean, so many of the missions are about them recording things and seeing stuff. Split diopter, we talked about already. And the biggest thing, which was he finally got to do his train sequence that he'd been wanting to do since Untouchables. Oh. I didn't know that. He wanted to do that for Untouchables. Yeah, that's how the movie ended. They ran out of money, probably shooting the Canadian border sequence. So he came up with the Odessa Steps sequence as a replacement. So this was his final. He got to really go out. Pretty good compromise. Pretty great. Yeah. Yeah. It worked out for both movies. Yeah. Yeah. I love that train sequence too. The visual effects hold up pretty well. Because a lot of models. It gets a little bit too much with the helicopter jumping onto the helicopter and stuff like that. The compositing isn't great. A little bit. I just mean in general, the idea of it is pretty ridiculous. Yeah. But I still love that sequence, and you really feel the wind in your face when you're watching that scene and how much the impact of it. You know, they don't take it lightly. I do think it was his first non-R-rated film since Obsession, maybe? Obsession wasn't R. It was not R. Even though there's weird incest. Yeah. Implied incest. Yeah. Oh, another thing we wanted to track through the whole series is his bosses. Because he never has the same boss. He's finally starting to now. They're starting by the time they get to Mission Impossible 6, they're starting to have the same. But in this one, it's Kittredge.
Is Phelps his boss or just his sort of like direct superior?
Just his direct superior. I think the boss is Kittredge.
Okay.
And he's the head of IMF. That's what we're talking about. We're
Okay.
talking about the head of IMF in each movie. In this one, it's Kittredge, and it's that actor who I don't have his name in front of me.
Henry Chesney.
He is so great and so distinct. I think he's on what show is he on? Revenge?
Oh, he's on a show now.
I think
okay.
He's been on a show my wife was watching, and I sort of see him every now and then on the show. And I always just think he's so distinct and great. I don't know why he doesn't work more. He's so good in this movie.
But he did the same role basically, but great, in Clear and Present Danger, which was probably the next year or so, and it was released by Paramount.
I thought Clear and Present Danger was before this.
Oh, was it?
I think it was around the same time.
Yeah. So that's another Paramount movie. He plays pretty much the same character.
But he's so good in this. He's so dry. Like the part where he's tracking Ethan Hunt when in Langley.
Yeah.
When Ethan Hunt is in Langley, and they're looking at the screens and they're talking about what he's doing. He's recruiting people.
Yeah.
And then the fire alarm goes off, and just his delivery on that line.
Yeah, he has a really great.
Do we have to evacuate?
Yeah. I think all of his line deliveries are really weird.
Yeah.
And great.
I'm bummed that they didn't bring him back.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean,
but obviously we'll talk about it when we get to 2. But they brought in Anthony Hopkins to be his boss in the second one.
There's a lot of like sort of jurisdictional turnover.
But I'd like to get into what his relationship is with each boss.
Okay. We're going to get into
in this one, it seems like it's just pretty much a straightforward, like he's not really as direct with him because I think Phelps is the one who's interacting more with Kittredge.
Right. It's like Phelps is his manager, Kittredge is his VP.
Yes.
There's not a lot of communication there, but obviously he could go to him if he had a problem. He sends him the kind of Dick Tracy
if he had a
watch.
personal problem,
yeah.
he could go talk to him.
Yeah.
He could sit down in his office and they could
they could hash it out before it goes to HR. You don't want it to. I mean, that's really the last.
I think especially by the end of this one.
Yeah.
It seems like he and Kittredge, because he sent him the watch before they go on the train.
Yes, his like Dick Tracy watch.
Because by that time he realizes Kittredge is a good guy, even though he's messing with my parents in this one.
Yeah.
Which I have to say also, the original show stayed away from their personal lives, and that was something that Bruce Geller, the creator of the whole original show, made it as a rule with the writers. He'd always tell them, I've read this before, that he'd tell them, like, don't get into the characters' personal lives.
Right.
Like, it's not what this show is about. It's not what it is. And they very rarely did it. And we'll have to talk about, when we get to the show, we'll talk about episodes where they did do it.
Yeah.
In this movie, they bring in his parents, Ethan Hunt's parents, to, like, put pressure on him to do things, but they don't, you never meet them.
Right.
So I love I thought they used just the right amount. So they used the parents kind of as a plot device, but you understand why.
But it's not like the end of the movie is him running into his mother's arms.
Right. Yeah. You don't meet, which I think in some of the later movies they get too far.
Well,
into Ethan Hunt.
we'll talk about that.
Yeah. Okay.
It works, and Dale Dye too as the kind of second in command. Barnes. Yeah. Great. I mean, Dale Dye is famous for being a military guy. He was in Vietnam. He trains. He trains. He's one of those guys that like trains actors. Barnes. And I think he's great.
Put a guy at the airport.
His line delivery is great.
I know, that guy is so great. I don't know why he doesn't work
important to him.
He's wonderful.
You squeeze. Like that's a great line delivery. Kevin, what do you
good.
think about this line delivery? My impression of it.
I think it was great.
Okay, great. All right, we gotta sign off on that one.
Absolutely.
Also all the Dutch angles. Oh my God,
Yes.
this movie is just chock full of crazy Dutch angles. The scene in the aquarium restaurant, especially, they get right up under Cruise's face with one.
There's
and the
some
other
weird
one in Kittredge's
angles.
face. Oh, I love them so much. His anamorphic zoom lenses are just beautiful. I just would kill to work with that.
Here's another interesting thing that I looked up is that the Channel, where the entire climax only opened in '94. So this is like brand new,
like a little advertisement,
right? And the other thing I want to talk about as we near the end of this, we're nearing the end of the movie. They set up Tom Cruise as the next Phelps. Has never happened in now 6 movies, really.
What do you mean? Yeah, he is.
He's not though, but he's not saying, here's here's the team, here's this.
That's what Phelps is the one who receives the missions.
I know, but shouldn't he be like training new people? I guess he kind of does. He has a different team, but do you think he's in? Phelps felt more like
would go in the original show. The whole setup of the show, the structure was exactly the same. He would go to a weird location and like get the mission.
Right.
Like in the movie, they do it on the plane. He gets it from the flight attendant, and then he would get his mission, and then there would be a scene just like at the beginning when John Voight is running through the whole mission with everybody. I guess Tom Cruise doesn't really run through the mission with
He doesn't.
people, but he does receive messages from IMF that tell him the mission, right?
That's true.
At least in 4 and 5.
We also have to talk about the delivery system of
I think
his message.
in 3 he does. Well, in 3 he's retired, so he does.
But he still gets
it
a
through
mission.
a magazine or something.
No, he gets
right?
it through a disposable camera.
Right, that's what it is. Yeah.
We'll talk about the delivery system of all
And I
of these
think
missions.
in 2 he gets it through his sunglasses.
Yeah.
So
He's
he's the new Phelps. What's the problem?
This
What
is
do-
my
what do you-
problem.
what do you want from them?
I feel like Phelps is much more of a kind of like boss. Whereas to me,
But are you basing that just on the first movie?
I guess I am. I mean, I'm basing it on the fact that Cruise.
Because in the first movie they kind of make Phelps like he's old, he's about to retire. It's a little different. Like he's training people, because he's going to Chicago to train people. That wasn't really part of the old show. As far as I haven't watched the 80s show, and I've seen probably maybe half of the episodes of the original 60s show. There's like 7 seasons.
Are there really? I thought it was only from it was 66 to 73 or something.
Yeah.
Okay. But I feel like Cruise is always just running around like kind of he seems to be more of a like soldier and not a general.
Oh yeah.
That's just my. But maybe I'm just basing this off of.
But they all kind of engage in that in the old show.
Okay.
Each one gets involved in different action situations and stuff, depending on what the mission is.
Well, I don't want to give away.
But they want to make it a Tom Cruise action vehicle.
Yes.
So that's why he's.
Would you say? I mean, I don't want to give anything away, but is this your favorite one? You think still?
Yeah, I mean, I think I won't get into specific rankings, but I will say that this is my favorite movie for sure. It's one of my favorite movies ever.
Ever.
I love it so much. And what about you? I guess.
Yeah.
We'll
I mean, yeah, we'll talk.
I don't
about
want to get into rankings, so let's hold off on that until we get further on.
Is there anything else we want to talk about?
There's stuff I wanted to bring up. Just a couple things.
Okay.
The screenplay and who was involved. You mentioned before.
Yes.
Just the credits on this movie are insane. It's story by David Koepp and Steven Zalian.
Oh wow.
And then written by David Koepp and Robert Towne.
Yes.
That's insane.
Do you remember the
in the De Palma documentary?
Yes.
He talks about how he had David Koepp in one hotel room and Robert Towne in a different hotel room writing competing versions.
Yeah.
He said it was the only time he'd ever done that. I think
Bob Towne wanted to end the movie with just the scene in the kind of like box car where they're taking masks off.
Yeah.
So, De Palma used his reverse psychology and said, "Oh, great, masks in a boxcar, I love it." And then Cruise kind of thought about it for a minute, and they compromised. There is still a boxcar scene, which Bob Towne, I'm sure, is excited about, but
then they realized they needed to take it on top of that train.
Yeah, they need a little bit more of a dynamic ending.
That was actually, speaking of the masks, that's the other thing I wanted to bring up was Rob Bottin, who created this whole mask thing, which is so wonderful. The whole look of it, the way they peel off the mask, the way they like pull them off. I mean, it's just such a cool.
It's great.
I can't just in that opening sequence when Cruise comes in and pulls off the mask and get rid of that scum. Like, just that the whole effect of it is practical and it looks amazing. So I think I don't think people talk about that enough. But the masks are obviously such a huge part of the whole series. Yes. And Rob Bottin, who did the makeup for The Thing.
Yes.
The John Carpenter's The Thing.
And The Fly.
I mean, unbelievable. Such cool work.
And you hear later filmmakers talk about looking towards the earlier movies and saying, okay, where's the sweet spot of how many masks can we have? This one had too many masks. This one maybe didn't have enough.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into it when we get into the other ones. The first one had just the right amount.
I think so. Yeah.
We'll have to do a little mask tracker for each movie. Anything else we want to talk about?
Is there you?
Oh, I want to bring up this idea because we've always talked about this when we overanalyze the Mission Impossible movies. We always complain about two things. One, the structure of the movie. At least this is something that I always think about.
Oh yes.
The midpoint set piece is always way better than the climax.
Yes.
And this is a problem I think for all the movies. They have this problem where the midpoint sequence, Langley, the Vatican, Dubai. What is it? The motorcycles in the fifth one? I don't know. The opera's great.
Yes, the opera. I think the opera one.
The midpoint sequences are always the best sequences.
Yes.
If you had to rate the set pieces, you did a ranking of all the set pieces, which we should do in another episode. Give our rankings of what are the best big Mission Impossible set pieces. They're always the midpoint, and the climax is never as good as the midpoint. But I would say that we should talk about it for each movie. And I think in this one, this is probably the best climax.
Yeah, I'm a big fan
the
of
bullet train is pretty.
The bullet
epic.
train is great. I'm a big fan of the car park kind
Four.
of jigsaw puzzle.
It's great, but it's not anywhere near
no,
as
it's
good as
not.
Dubai.
No, but there's
or Langley.
Yeah, you brought up the fact that these movies are structured like a pyramid.
Yes,
they really
they
kind of have the peak and they meet at the because you could point to the opening intrusion in Prague. That's sort of the base, and then the train. They're great sequences.
It always feels like by the climax things are falling apart so much that they can't. Like what I would love for them to do is why can't they take one of those set pieces and make that the climax? Make it like let's go into the climax with all right. We need to treat this like one of our missions.
Yes,
and make it an impossible mission. Make the Kremlin or the Vatican or Langley getting into CIA headquarters. Make that the goal of the climax as opposed to I don't know. They must have reasons why it's hard to get that to happen with the plot and everything is usually like someone's in danger and they have to go save them or whatever.
Right.
But I don't know. It's just something that it always we talk about.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot.
And the other thing I want to talk about that we always discuss is the villains in the series. The villains, it feels like they never really have that distinct of a villain.
But this is the best villain, probably.
Probably, I think, because it works within. It's an emotional villain too.
Yeah.
It's his mentor, his father figure. I know a lot of people. Of course, Philip Seymour Hoffman is wonderful in the third movie.
Yes.
But we'll get into it when we get to the third movie, but I feel like they didn't use him as well as they could, especially in the climax.
Right.
So
we also should track his relationship with IMF because he seems to always be in trouble or
right.
Yeah.
So in this one he's in trouble.
He's disavowed.
But he's disavowed, but it's not his fault and he clears his name.
Yes. That's what I like. This is sort of a very nice kind of movie because he just wants his job back.
Yeah.
He's doing all this elaborate stuff.
And I bet when he gets disavowed, he can't really get on unemployment. Probably
not.
I don't think you can file for unemployment if you're disavowed.
Yeah, because they would say, "What was your last job?"
And what kind of job could he even get?
Yeah,
he'd have to start a whole new identity. I don't know what he'd do.
I mean, look to Charles's fanfic for that. I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, he's probably has plenty of skills.
Yeah. But he's been so one movie and he's already been disavowed and rehired.
Yes.
Even though he doesn't even want to go back at the end, which was kind of interesting.
Right.
That Luther.
That's true, and they leave it open, but know he's going to take it. Oh, another thing we should talk about, the songs in each movie. The end of the movie say, would you like the flight attendant asks him, how about the video of the cinema of Aruba or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he just gives the look, and then they start the music, and this time it's not Elfman's music.
No.
This is in the first one. They brought in Adam Clayton and Larry Mullen Jr. from U2 to do the song, and I don't know if people probably don't. I love this piece of music. I'm a big U2 fan, and
I had the single. There was a very like a remix or something on the other side.
Yeah.
They
had two versions. The one that's in the movie, and they had a remix. But I love what they did with it. And I think Adam Clayton and Larry Mullen were the first ones to put it into 4/4 times. So they had to add a couple notes to make it like boom, 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 boom.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then I think that paved the way for other people to do it in the following movies as well. But
I would say that version of the score inspired the entire soundtrack for The Saint, which was another based on a 60s spy show that came out from Paramount a couple years later.
I haven't seen that since theaters.
But do you remember the soundtrack was all that kind of stuff.
Didn't Billy Corgan do some music for that?
He might have. I know Chemical Brothers were on the soundtrack. It was very like late 90s, mid 90s techno, like burgeoning. What the kids listen to now is not techno. We got it back then. But it's a great ending, and it kind of gets you charged and ready to go and ready for the rest of the franchise, which we certainly were. And I hope you guys are ready for the rest of the show. For Charles Hood, that's him. We're going to say goodbye.
For Drew Taylor.
We're going to say bye.
That's you.
That's me. We'll see you on the next mission.
See you next one.
Yeah.
If you choose to accept it.
Please do.
I hope you
please.
do. Thanks again for listening, everyone. And before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcasts@gmail.com. If you'd like to watch the original Mission Impossible television show, all 7 seasons are currently available to stream on Amazon Prime. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.